I love Steam Next Fest. It's like game design Christmas. It's always so awesome seeing all these new mechanics, fresh ideas, and wild genre mashups. I always end up walking away at the end of it pining for games I could have never even dreamt of a week ago. It's like a game jam, but instead of going, oh man, I wish this were a full product I could spend my money on, I get to think, oh man, I wish I had the money to spend on this full product. All the while, my Steam wishlist keeps approaching critical mass. If any sugar daddies want to sponsor my gaming addiction, my DMs are open. Anyway, in no particular order, here's 25 standouts from the February 2025 Steam Next Fest. The Bench is a game with a premise that on paper sounds kinda dull. You play an old man who sits on a bench and feeds pigeons. Oh, but here's the thing, you can also teleport to other benches by flinging slices of bread at them. Not only that, but you can hatch an army of pigeons to do your bidding by chucking them at objects or people to do anything from steal, distract, push, grab, attack, you name it. Experimenting with all the strange and zany interactions was just plain fun, and the puzzles on display in the demo took full advantage of the interesting and absurd mechanics. It's delightfully silly, and I live for games that commit to bizarre new ideas like this. HASTE Broken Worlds is like if you took Landfall's previous Clustertruck, already an amazing game with a heavy emphasis on movement and aerial control to avoid obstacles, and Alto's Odyssey, another wonderful game about flow state and soaring in and out of dunes of sand, and threw him into each end of a particle accelerator. It pulls off something Sega has struggled with for almost 2 decades, making high-speed 3D movement feel exhilarating without sacrificing game feel and precision. HASTE has you running through linear levels at breakneck speeds, but adds a hill landing mechanic a la Alto's Odyssey. Nail the right angle on a slope and you'll slingshot forward off the next hill faster and further. Throw in some interesting upgrades to mix up your gameplay, stunning animations that really sell the speed, fun level mechanics, not to mention some banger tunes, and you have a recipe for an instant wishlist from me. I love boomer shooters. Nothing gives that high-octane rush like zooming around at top speeds, just blasting away anything that dares enter the flashing rectangle my irises are super glued to. UNYIELDER feels similar to games like Doom Eternal or DUSK with its zippy movement, but instead of mowing through hordes of enemies, it takes after something closer to Ultrakill's tense and challenging boss battles in the form of a boss rush roguelike. And whoo mama does this game just feel so good. Every trigger pull is chunky, and jumping around in a duelist dance with these bosses is pure serotonin. When I realized I could parry a boss's attack with a well-timed shot or melee, I was like,
Oh, that's hot. That's hot.
I cannot wait to see all the different weapons and bosses they have planned for the full release. The Knightling feels kind of like the team at Twirlbound were playing Breath of the Wild and thought to themselves, you know, I think this game would probably just be better if you could shield surf everywhere, all the time, forever. And I think this game kind of maybe makes me agree. The Knightling feels like a forgotten PS2 gem in the best possible way. In some senses, reminiscent of classics like Jak and Daxter or Sly Cooper, with its charming open world full of secrets, and traversal and combat mechanics so fluid, even Mario and Link should take notes. The Knightling has me itching for adventure. I really don't know how to describe this next game to you. The elevator pitches that you play a former Yakuza seeking to restart life in a small, run-down Japanese town, where he becomes embroiled in conspiracy along with his partner, a living mascot shaped like a giant severed pinky toe, in this open world driving narrative adventure mascot management simulator from the minds behind Paradise Killer. I know I said the bench was weird, but this one is just an acid trip of a game. But it was also stupidly hilarious. The truck gameplay was fun and wacky in a collectathon crazy taxi kind of way, and the management aspects were surprisingly interesting. I have no idea what I just played, but I absolutely want more of this fever dream of a game. Wheel World pulled me in with its stunning art direction, but it hooked me with how good it feels to play. A slick bicycle game set in an open world where you can race, collect new parts for your bike, and explore breathtaking landscapes with your trusty cycle spirit sidekick, Scully. Every ride is a gorgeous, flowing tour of scenic vistas, and the controls are buttery smooth, easily rivaling other cycling great, Lonely Mountains Downhill. If you're looking for a chill game where you can just hop on a bike and lose yourself in the ride, give this one a look. Jitter is a deceptively deep little space sim that kind of feels like FTL, but with real-time hands-on spaceflight. Its clean, minimalist aesthetic, super fun physics-based controls, and granular interior ship systems completely wrapped me up in this game's atmosphere, and I quickly got completely lost in its fantasy, tweaking my ship and plotting every maneuver as if I was a real starship captain. The demo's single story mission left me craving more exploration, customization, and hard sci-fi goodness. As a fan of books like The Martian and Seven Eves, this really scratched my space game itch. Another cool game that almost feels like it's straight out of a science fiction novel, STRAND, is a first-person puzzle exploration game in the spirit of games like Myst and Riven, where you play a scientist who awakes on the Ares space station alone. The rest of her crew mysteriously vanished. Armed with your wits, you explore, take notes, solve puzzles, and make deductions, all while unraveling the mystery behind what happened on the isolated station. I really enjoyed the art direction of this game, and it reminded me of some of my favorite parts of 2017's Prey, but without the spooky shadow tentacle symbiotes. I hope. Even in a post-Hades world that's saturated with dozens of roguelike copycats, I can honestly say that Lost in Random: The Eternal Die is the first one that really grabbed me with its striking art style, challenging boss fights, tight controls, and super cool dice face-based upgrade system that all ties so well into its roguelike mechanics, but still feel different enough from Hades to offer a unique and fun experience. It's definitely one that I think can hold fans of Hades or other roguelikes over until Hades 2 finally releases into 1.0. The next game is, spoiler alert, another action roguelike. In all honesty, I'm starting to get a bit of roguelike fatigue at this point. But sometimes you just gotta turn your brain off, hop into a run, and blast stuff with your friends. Risk of Rain 2 is usually one of my go-tos for that, and Shape of Dreams takes heavy inspiration from its meta systems and progression, while offering a frenetic, MOBA-like experience instead of Risk of Rain's seizure-inducing bullet hell. It's like being able to ask your friends to play League of Legends together, but without the risk of them getting hate speeched. 3D platformer fans have been eating good these last few years, with the indie scene pumping out banger after banger, as well as other amazing upcoming titles like The Big Catch and Orbo's Odyssey on the horizon. As apparently the third entry in a 3D platformer series with wonderfully charming art design that I've never heard of, Demon Tides already has the makings to be one of my all-time favorite 3D platformers. The interaction of the movement mechanics instantly gave me that Super Mario Odyssey moment when you realize you can chain hat throws and dives, and suddenly you feel like you found speedrun tech that breaks the laws of physics. That alone would already make this a shoo-in for an all-time 3D platformer, but developer Fabraz had to go even harder in the paint with an open ocean dotted with islands a la Wind Waker, where each one is a phenomenally designed playground of platforming perfection. If there's something else that will get a platformer junkie like me interested in your game, is to give me a unique and interesting method of traversal, and Hypogea does just that. What really sets it apart is the multi-use mechanics surrounding the cane as a vaulting staff that can shoot you up or forward depending on when you jump off of it, or a long hook to reach high ledges, or swing on anchors suspended above dark chasms. This game's liminal atmosphere and speechless characters, along with its careful and deliberate platforming, accentuates its solemn, brutalist aesthetic that reminds me of games like Nier Automata. Hypogea flips the concept of platforming on its head, and instead of letting you bounce around like a rubber ball, turns traversal into a puzzle of its own, making traveling even short distances feel deliberate and rewarding. Another game that flips the script on the usual platformer rules is 2D platformer Shotgun Cop Man. Like Super Meat Boy and N+, it proves that sometimes all you need is tight level design and movement that feels just right. And Shotgun Cop Man is as straightforward, no-frills game feel focused as its name suggests. You play as a tiny, rectangular cop man that has a shotgun that propels you with its recoil instead of a jump button, with every blast careening you through these obstacle-filled levels, avoiding death traps, and trying to eliminate enemies, all the while trying to juggle the momentum from using the guns for both traversal and combat. And the experience it provides is hectic, visceral, and most of all, wildly addicting. Is This Seat Taken is an overwhelmingly cute and charming little puzzle game where you sort little shaped people into taxis, wedding seating arrangements, dance floors, and more, each with their own quirky seating preferences. The circle named Luke might want a window seat, while Cindy might not want to sit next to Luke, but at the same time does want to be in the second row and wants to sit next to Lucy, who doesn't want a window seat. It's a super satisfying logic puzzle wrapped in a cozy aesthetic with adorable little story vignettes that go along with recurring characters across different puzzles and locales. It's a perfect little relaxing brain massager of a game. From about the moment that humans can move on our own, we are instinctively programmed with the primal urge to climb, to surmount obstacles and survey the world from on high, filled with the satisfaction of overcoming the all-pervasive force of gravity, and with nothing but the strength of our body, climbing to the pinnacle of our world, whether that's a couch in a living room or the tallest mountain on planet Earth. And because of this urge, it's no wonder that climbing games are so immensely satisfying to play. Games like the amazing Jusant, the cozy but challenging Valley Peaks, and the heart-poundingly tense upcoming game from the game bakers, Cairn. From its demo, White Knuckle is primed to be a worthy addition to this genre, with its super satisfying first-person movement that relies on using each hand to amble from handhold to handhold, and unique inventory management that can make or break a climbing line. Hidden side paths with secrets and complex climbing puzzles that can be tackled in a variety of ways allows for a ton of player expression in how you ascend these dark, concrete halls. From the studio that made the wickedly stylish 80s arcade-inspired Narita Boy comes a new, flashy title in Haneda Girl, a game that feels like playing Katana Zero on cocaine, with a dual player state mechanic reminiscent of other mech games like Blaster Master Zero or Gato Roboto, but with the speed and lethality of Sanabi or the aforementioned Katana Zero. Haneda Girl places you in levels filled with obstacles and enemies that can be tackled by either Haneda Girl, with her quick dashing sword strikes, but always in danger of dying from a single hit, or by instantly swapping to her more resilient mech suit Mother, whose machine gun and thrusters can make quick work of a room of turrets, destructibles, and soldiers. I lost way more time than I expected trying to chain together the perfect combo of moves to zoom through stages at top speeds, all to achieve the ever so elusive top marks on each stage, a thrill that only few games like Neon White have instilled in me before. One of the reasons I love video games as a medium is that it provides something that no other medium can at the same level, and that is interactivity. While a book can draw you into a world and paint pictures in your mind that no special effects could ever rival, and while movies can make you empathize with characters that feel like real, true people, all on the strength of an actor's craft, only video games can present you with choices that you, personally, have to make. Choices that have consequences that you, the player, must reckon with. To be able to directly place you inside a narrative is something that video games will always have over other forms of media, and developer Davey Wreden utilizes this advantage to mind-blowing results with his titles The Stanley Parable and The Beginner's Guide, two games that utilize narrative in ways that will forever shape how you understand storytelling. And his newest title, Wanderstop, while markedly different, uses the format of the cozy video game to tell a heart-wrenching story about burnout, self-criticism, how it can tear us apart, and how to put ourselves back together again. I'm sure the demo only tells us part of the whole picture of the game, and knowing Wreden, I'm excited to see what narrative tricks he has yet to pull out of his sleeves. Right on the heels of Wanderstop comes another narrative game that showcases the medium's strength in storytelling. In Despelote, a game that feels equal parts documentary and period piece, you play as Julian, a soccer-obsessed child in Quito, Ecuador during the country's rise to the 2001 qualifiers for the FIFA World Cup. During the demo's short runtime, developers Julian Cordero and Sebastian Valbuena managed to truly invoke feelings of nostalgia for a childhood that isn't even mine, with their grounded, realistic dialogue and strikingly gorgeous art direction. I have no idea what to expect out of the rest of Despelote, but its ability to perfectly capture the small wonders of childhood and being wrapped up in something that completely encompasses your entire life are in equal parts heartwarming and awe-inspiring. Publisher Panic never seems to pass up the opportunity to lift up unique and profound passion projects. Hey, so remember when I said I was getting tired of roguelikes? Yeah, well, I still added this next one to my wishlist anyway. Day of the Shell is a self-proclaimed one-click, one-turn tactical roguelike game in the vein of genre headliners like XCOM, Fights in Tight Spaces, Tactical Breach Wizards, and Into the Breach. But instead of meticulously planning out turns with multiple units with special abilities and movement to consider, Day of the Shell distills the gameplay down into a single unit with only two actions: move and shoot. This change, along with showing when your opponents will act and what they will do, turns a normally sluggish experience that can sometimes come to a screeching halt due to analysis paralysis into a snappy, exciting experience that still remains strategic and tactical with a wide variety of enemies and upgrades. Bonus recommendation: if you enjoy games like this and Into the Breach, I highly recommend the excellent Shogun Showdown, which gives a similar experience in a different formula in package. While some of the games on this list made me chuckle or giggle to myself, none of them had me bust out laughing as hard as Deliver at All Costs, a ridiculously silly game about poorly delivering often unconventional packages around a town in an old delivery pickup truck. With its absurd, physics-based gameplay, you'll be smashing through buildings, shooting fireworks into oncoming traffic, or slapping pedestrians with your truck's pneumatically powered doors at full clip, all the while trying to maintain some semblance of professionalism in getting your deliveries mostly intact from point A to B. It's stupid, chaotic fun with creative missions that I can only imagine get wackier as the game goes along. A Short Hike is one of my favorite games of all time. It's like a warm blanket of a video game, a cozy little title that tonally mimics games like Animal Crossing, but focused on fun movement and cheeky exploration. And while not the same in terms of direct gameplay, It's hard to deny the parallels and inspiration when looking at the demo for the wonderfully wholesome Goodlands, a game about being a little dinosaur finding fossils in a huge nature park and taking them back to process and display in your own little museum. The fossils and museum were one of my favorite parts of the Animal Crossing games, and Goodlands leans even harder into that core concept with its large open map you traverse with your cute little truck, a satisfying fossil cleaning minigame, and a charming cast of NPCs that include your very own personal dig team that made me chuckle every time I interacted with them. I'm so excited to dip my toes into this adorable little exploration and simulation game. As I said earlier, I love a 3D platformer with unique mechanics, and Metro Gravity's, gravity bending powers quite literally add an entirely new dimension to this Metroidvania-styled platformer to consider when navigating its twisting interiors, where almost any surface you walk on changes the direction of gravity to be your floor, and the ability to lock gravity in that direction at will creates the groundwork for clever puzzle and level design to take center stage in a way that a series with similar powers, Gravity Rush, never seemed to capitalize on enough. Surprisingly solid Sekiro-inspired combat, along with the promise of cool upgrades and powers to manipulate gravity and your movement through the environments even more, make an already interesting title into something that could be one of the most unique 3D platformers on the market. An impressive feat for what I believe is a one-person project. I tend to do a ton of scouring the web for good demo recommendations, in addition to scrolling through hundreds and hundreds of listings on Steam during Next Fests in order to find the coolest and most interesting titles. And while I found people ranging in the dozens to thousands talking about most of the titles on this list, I saw absolutely no one mention the gem that is Labyrinth of the Demon King, a first-person survival horror dungeon crawler that felt like the perfect blend of From Software's Kingsfield series combined with the early Resident Evil titles, with a perfectly executed nostalgic PS1-style feudal Japanese horror aesthetic. The slow, deliberate dungeon-crawling gameplay of exploring this haunted labyrinth full of yokai and other demonic horrors just nailed the perfect balance of tense and mysterious that just made me want to keep exploring in spite of my fear and doubt of if I could survive up against what may lay behind every fog-shrouded corner. I mentioned my love of it earlier, but I truly think one thing the games industry can always use more of is weird. Weird gave us the off-the-wall, unhinged masterpieces like Death Stranding, Katamari, Cruelty Squad, and the upcoming Dreams of Another, and many, many more. Weird gives us experiences that we could have never dreamed of on our own, let alone made a game out of. Roguelite Deck Builder is weird as crap, but that weirdness is what makes such a silly, stupid concept weirdly compelling. It makes every little change in the gameplay a surprise, a shock, or the promise of a mystery you know you'll never expect will unfold in the way you might think. On the surface, Roguelite Deck Builder is a painfully literal game in which you build a wooden deck while a rogue light bulb flickers on and off. But between its uniquely strange aesthetic and surprisingly satisfying hammering mechanics, it promises weird in spades, something that will always inexplicably draw me into titles like this. And at last, we have what was my favorite game of the February 2025 Steam Next Fest, Isle of Reveries. The Legend of Zelda, since my childhood, has always been one of my favorite video game series, and it's my belief that it's attained such an immortal status among gamers because of its ability to take its core game design pillars of player freedom, exploration, puzzle solving and combat that has been painstakingly refined over decades of titles, and harmonized those into a format that elevates and melds together those individual concepts to create one of the greatest masterclasses in game design ever conceived. And Isle of Reveries clearly displays a mastery of the principles of what make classic titles like A Link to the Past, Link's Awakening, and Oracle of Ages and Seasons so great. In the demo's single dungeon out of the game's full 8, Isle of Reveries delivered all the greatest parts of what I think are the Zelda series' best showings, with puzzles that have wonderful aha moments spawned from the freedom to experiment with interactions of the game's mechanics, level design that is on par with Nintendo themselves, and a wickedly unique and creative boss battle, and an aesthetic, direction, and feel that perfectly evokes what some might call the golden era of gaming. This Steam Next Fest was obviously packed with so many amazing games. And if they didn't make this list, it's either because I didn't have time to play it, it wasn't for me, or maybe it was just outshined by these 25 titles in my eyes. Let me know what games you liked the most from this Next Fest. Before I go, I do want to shout out a few more cool titles that I feel deserve some attention. While not technically part of Next Fest, I did play through the excellent demos for the super stylish Resident Evil inspired Sorry We're Closed, and the also equally stylish WarioWare inspired Mindwave. Fumes was a super cool cross between a boomer shooter and a Twisted Metal / Mad Max style car combat game. And while I have still yet to purchase the original Duck Detective, I'm sure that the Ghost of Glamping's demo is just as hilarious and charming as the Secret Salamis was. I hope this list helped you find your next favorite game. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.